I'll start assembling the film advance by putting the sprocket shaft back in place. So run a little bit of synthetic grease at the top and the bottom where it runs through the housing. Now I wipe on the gear teeth, won't hurt. It goes in from the top of the camera, and we've got to get the various pieces in place. The sprocket from the top, then the wheel, the roller at the bottom, and line this up with a cavity in the body. That all looks good. Now lining those holes up is always entertaining. Got our two tiny screws that go in there. Of course the screwdriver is magnetised and it just immediately lifts that screw up out of the hole. Get that started, and miracle, it found the hole in the shaft. Do that up tight. And then the screw on the roller at the bottom. Yes, I found the hole. Do that up. So there's our sprocket shaft back in place. That's the first step. Now, the take-up spool. Just wipe a little bit of synthetic grease around the inside of the base there. And I'll run some on the spring here. That spring gives us our tension. Pop that into place in the body, just like that, and shut the camera back. The film advance shaft and the bush, and that's held in place with 3 screws. So I'll use some synthetic grease, run that into the bush. That looks to be in quite good order. If it had been particularly rough, and sometimes they are rough from grit and stuff that's got in there, I would probably chosen to use some thicker graphite grease in there instead. This drops on here and has to line up, the tang on the bottom has to line up with the slot in the top of the take-up spool. So you may have to fiddle around a bit to get that seated. Just get one screw in there to hold it loosely in place while I open the back of the camera and see that that's sitting in place. That'll do. No, that's not lined up yet. That's better. Now it is. And that screw down. Get the other 2 in. And with all three in place, I can do those screws up tight. And check that that revolves smoothly. It does. That'll roll in either direction, there's no problem with that. And there's a screw that's set right there over the top of that gear and stopped me being able to lift that out of the body. And it was one of these. Was it that one? Let's get this in position. That's it. It's started. Okay, so that's a good start on the film advance. Now, there are various other things need to go in here. Our shutter release parts for one. Well, our shutter release shaft here can go in place. I'll just give that a very brief wipe with some molybdenum paste. That drops in over the top of the shaft right there. And that's retained with a plate, which is a small screw at this end. That looks suspiciously clean, that screw. I'm not sure that's the right one for the job. And a screw here. That one can be tightened up with the pliers. Be very careful if you're using pliers on a screw like that post. It's very easy when you've got a pair of pliers in your hand to provide too much torque and just shear that screw right off, and you won't enjoy that. We're not quite there yet, but this is the shutter release that'll drop in there. Oh, I see that that guide post there is loose. That screw, that's not supposed to be loose. Tighten that up and see if it stays tight. The front standard pulled into position. How does that work? Yeah, the shutter release is good, the action's nice and smooth. That'll do well. Oh, well, we don't need that piece in there at the moment. Getting the rest of the film advance together is always entertaining. Just checking that these spacer washers are the same size. They are. We had a plain washer down here. Now, two gears, they're two ratchet wheels. Of course, I didn't take note of which one went where, so I'm going to have to wing it now and see if I can figure it out by putting another component in place. That one there goes up the other way. Doesn't it? Yes. And the other arm is this one. It's not the one I need either. This one is the one I need. Just pop that on there. Right. So that tells me which way up things go. So I know which one has the ratchet wheel pointing in the correct direction. So that needs a ratchet wheel facing in that direction. It's quite normal for these to be a struggle to get back on the post. You can push them on with the advance knob. That's fine. Then there's a spacer in between the two. And then the second one goes the other way. This one's got some cryptic mark on there that someone's put there, presumably to tell them something important. And I will use the advance knob to wind that on. Where's my spanner? Hiding. That one may do the job for me. Close enough. Alright. That was good, so basically I just used the advance knob there to force those wheels down. Check the height, making sure that that one does engage correctly there, so that's all good. Take this off and I'll lubricate this with touch of molybdenum paste. Where are we? Right, this part. Space to wash the wind under there. The little cam runs on the top. I'll run around the edge of that cam with some molybdenum paste. Shouldn't have been so free with the grease, now the air can't escape. Wipe that out a bit. Certainly that's better. Let's run some molybdenum paste through the centre of this. Fit that into position. That looks good. Let's screw goes on the top, holds that all in place. Now in this particular case those two levers have stayed together while I've cleaned them. They don't always do that, they often come apart, and then you've got to, so it's always worth taking great note of how the spring fits and how it holds those two levers together. Because if you don't take note of that, you're going to find it awkward putting things back together again afterwards. Now my spring, I have put somewhere clever, which is another way of saying I've lost the damn thing. Now there's no cause for alarm, it was here all along. Now this spring's been buggered around with, so it's a funny shape. We'll put that in place in a second. This arm can go on. And I think we can put the screw straight on the top that retains that as well. And I can see I've just missed something out there, so I'm just going to backpedal a bit. That looks good. That one's snug. This thing. Where's my gear? There's a gear goes on there, which engages with the gear on the sprocket shaft. Like that. Can I get to that screw easily? No, I've just made my life awkward for myself here, I think. Yeah. Let's take this off. Just created trouble for myself by covering over a spot where I needed to get at the screw. In fact, I've really made life awkward for myself. I should take that one off too. This is the advanced rewind lever. And pop this back on the front. Put my advanced knob on there. And the spring, which is already determined is somewhat out of shape, straighten that up a bit. And that should be fairly symmetrical, and it's nothing like symmetrical at the moment. Something more like that would be in order, I think. Now, there are 2 screws there, 2 screw holes. Making sure I'm putting this in the right one. Yep. It's the one closer to the front of the body that the spring post goes on. That hooks over there. This should hook onto the other lever there. That film advance should be pretty much assembled there. We put our shutter release shaft in. I'll put molybdenum paste on this edge here. This sharp edge here in particular, that operates the levers, and I'd want that to move freely. That post runs up against that thing, so I'll put some in there. This should go in like that. And if I went mad, I could put the shutter release button on there, couldn't I? Well, I won't. That's not picking up. Why is that not picking up? That's not sitting down correctly. My gear here is not sitting down correctly. That's better, now it is. Okay, that's fine. Press the release. Press the release. With that in the rewind position, everything rolls back nicely. Let's tighten that knob up. Yep, and as soon as I advance that, that's locked. I press the shutter release, it frees up the film advance. So the film advance is working correctly. That's looking good. I'll put my shutter release button on there if I can lay my hands on it. I'll put it somewhere clever. Done something with it. I'll find it.